Welcome, everyone. Tuesday, December 13th, a Tarmac Tuesday. The Jets officially 7-6. I am AM Pfeffer, your crew chief. Joining me, as always, reporting from Jets Universe, Johnny Jets.
Hello, Jets Universe.
Hello, Johnny. We've got a good one today. We've got an incredible one. We always do, of course, but we're about to bring on a young man who is a huge part of the Jets universe. He is putting out content left and right. He is full of energy, full of optimism. We need that. We need that at this juncture in the season. We know how you feel. We know how I feel. But we got to bring a guy on right now who's got his own show. Actually, I'm just going to add him into the stream. Welcome, Long Beach Joe.
Salutes again. Listen, thank you for having me on, Johnny. Listen, I cannot wait to talk about this football team with you folks. I really enjoy the season that we're having. The losses are it's taking a little toll. It's hurting, but we're finding our way through and we're playing well. And I cannot wait to talk to you folks about this football team today.
Well, we're excited as well, man. And we appreciate you coming on. We really do. Love your content. I just want to mention the Long Beach Joe show right off the bat, because you are putting out great stuff left and right on every social media channel, certainly on YouTube. And we really appreciate you coming on, just taking the time to do that. Let's hear about you, though, for a second. We need to know who Long Beach Joe is, first and foremost. Long Beach, and Johnny asked you right before we came on. We were talking in the green room. Long Beach, New York, or Long Beach, California?
It is Long Beach, California. Grew up on the West Coast. I've been a West Coast guy my whole life. All right. I love this. Love the West Coast. Love the weather. Love everything here. Basically grew up big basketball fan, Laker fan. As you can see, we've won so much. Our cup run is over, championship after championship. It's been wonderful. All right. So I just want to put that out there. But grew up.
Wait, by the way, not done yet. Anthony Davis is bringing it on strong, right? We're gonna sneak in, and just so you know, I'm in LA too. I mean, I want everyone here watching. I've been in Los Angeles since 2020, right?
That's what I'm talking about. We'll take it. Welcome. All right. Yeah. So a big.
But I can see Johnny's face. This is a New York Jets show, and I can see Johnny Jets thinking, "Are we talking Lakers? Are we 3 minutes into this thing? We're already going to the Lakers? No way."
Yeah. So a big Laker guy, grew up watching basketball. Really, I was a basketball player as well. Where I grew up, it was either you played basketball or you played football. You didn't really mesh the two. Was sitting down one night on a Monday night and caught the New York Jets versus the Dolphins, the Monday Night Miracle. And I remember I was watching the game and the Jets were just getting their butts kicked. And I was like, man, this team sucks. This team is awful. They can't get anything right. The Dolphins are dominating them. I remember Jason Taylor, was yelling at the fans and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, man, this team is awful. So I keep watching the game, and the Jets eventually come back and get the W. And I was so astounded by the fight, the grit, the fact they never gave up, that I said, man, I got to follow this team. I've got to see what they're about. Never was really into the NFL. Kept following them, kept watching them, and really just fell in love with the Jets and fell in love with football, NFL football at least, through the New York Jets. So that's how I became a Jets fan. Been a Jets fan all my life.
I mean, everyone's got an origin story. That's one of the better ones we've heard. Johnny, what do you think of that?
2000 was a tough year to become a Jets fan. Obviously, they lost their last 3 games, including the embarrassing, humiliating defeat to the Ravens at Buffalo the last week of the season with a Jets playoff spot on the line. A trick play to Jumbo Elliott, offensive tackle in the end zone to beat our division rival is always exciting. But other franchises value their great games by winning the Super Bowl. I'll leave it at that.
Well,
we have one under the belt. There are a few NFL teams out there who have none. So we can always point to that, and everybody always does, right? Everybody loves to remind us Broadway Joe's still the best player, but hey, we've got a couple of young guys now who are getting it done, man. I mean, all of a sudden, we're about to have the 2 rookies of the year. Both of them are favored to win as of today. I don't know if you know that, but both Wilson and Sauce are now favored offensive defense. And if Brees was still around, I mean, he'd be in the mix too. Let's call it like it is, right? So we got to
exactly
forward. And we were talking about that too, Joe. This draft class, I mean, it's like nothing we've ever seen.
Exactly, and that's what. And listen, Johnny, I hear you. I'm friends with a lot of Jets fans that feel kind of the same way you do, that have been suffering for a while, that have watched this team through the ups and downs. I've been there too. Okay, I remember the 2-win seasons and the Adam Gase era and just all the shenanigans and nonsense that have gone on, not just, picking bad players, bad drafts, the Vernon Goldstins, and we can keep going with the names of guys that we took that never panned out here, and the circus that our front office has been with firing Mike McCagnon after giving him a draft and a free agency. Just mind-boggling stuff, right?
That is the perfect description of shenanigans, by the way. Exactly, love that.
Mind-boggling stuff. But I think what Jets fans have to understand, especially the long-suffering ones, is we are in a different space now. We finally have structural organization, okay? That has been the biggest issue with the New York Jets for years. What changed when Joe Douglas got here? The GM and the coach no longer just reported to the owner. No, we have structure now. We have structural integrity, right? Now, the coach reports to the GM and the GM reports to the owner. If you look at how we draft for what? To fill positions of impact. If you look at a lot of the things that Joe Douglas has done since he's gotten here, valuing the offensive line. I've been saying that for years. You can't have a quarterback succeed here without having a proper offensive line to protect him. That's why Sam Darnold didn't work out here. He's getting blasted on a weekly basis. He couldn't stay healthy. You also got to provide your quarterback weapons. That's why we get Elijah Moore. That's why we got Garrett Wilson. These are all things. Running game as well, because we're in a run.
And Brees, second round Brees, top of the second round, trading back up again.
Exactly. We're in a run-first scheme. That's what the Shanahan scheme is all about. I'm here on the West Coast as you are, crew chief. Niners, I'm forced to watch them, okay? We run the exact same thing. They're one of the most boring, successful offenses in the entire league. They run, and then they run some more, and they don't ask their quarterback to do too much. What does Joe Douglas do? He takes his draft and puts it towards our offensive philosophy. Gets Breece Hall in the second round, who I can't wait for Breece to come back, but before he went down with that injury, was running like crazy. Like, we were back to doing what? Grounding and pounding. Last time we were a ground and pound football team, we were in the AFC championships 2 years in a row. It's a very easy, offense to run. But then that's what we did. We turned around and fixed our defense as well, right? What was the issue with the New York Jets last season? We were near the bottom of were we 32nd or 30? We were somewhere near the bottom of the league. 31st defensively. What is the biggest change, the most significant change with the New York Jets defense from then to now? The pass rush. We haven't had a pass rush in years. We haven't had an actual pass rusher since John Abraham. Before these, we get Carl Lawson. He was injured last season. He comes back this season. The emergence of Quinnen Williams, a guy that we all had big question marks about coming into this season. I think he's at 11 sacks right now. I think he leads all interior defensive linemen in sacks. He went and got Jermaine Johnson. He's got other guys within the rotation as well. Huff has been tremendous this year.
Huff is a third down maniac. I mean, his numbers are off the charts. And to your point, Joe, and here's what's amazing about that. I remember looking at the original 53, right? When we first had the guys after cut day, and we looked down and I'm like, yeah, we're kind of missing an extra guy along the offensive line. We could probably have an extra safety, maybe somebody in the cornerback room. No, why? Because we're carrying 10 on the edge, or interior rush. And to your point, I mean, that's what it is, right? I mean, Saleh, he wants to play the wide 9, and he wants to get after the quarterback, and it makes a big difference if he plays the cover 3. And you got 3 guys who could do it. Michael Carter may not have had his best game the other day, but he has been lights out, phenomenal, just as good as Reed and just as good as Nobody's just has been as good as Sauce, but Reed, Sauce, and Carter, the trio, have been tremendous back there. So
and again, to your point, crew chief, you're speaking facts. Listen, the New York Jets, we can finally get pressure with our front 4. That is something we've been missing for years. We finally stepped into the modern day NFL where everybody else in the league can do that. Everybody else that's good can do that consistently. Everybody else can do that. This is a passing league. We have finally stepped in to the defensive mind of the current day NFL and said, okay, we're going to get after the passer. You're not going to just sit back there for however long and be able to throw for 300 yards against the New York Jets anymore. That is not what's going to happen. And again, that helps Saleh coming into this year, adding all these guys, getting Carl Lawson back and the emergence of Quinnen Williams, because that's how that defensive scheme is ran in San Francisco. That team is built from front to back. Yeah. They got Bosa. They got a bunch of guys that they can throw at you. They get after you. They provide pressure. And then guess what? The secondary covers just long enough for you to make a bad mistake, because you will, unless you want to get smacked. You're going to throw something stupid. They get a turnover and they get the ball back, and then they just grind you and drain the clock with the running game. So I understand, Johnny, and I get it, and I want to hear from y'all about this too. But I'm telling you, I think we're in a different time, a different day, and the Jets are going to ascend. We just got to find, and maybe it's Mike White. I don't know. I know we'll talk about that. We just got to find the right guy to go forward with our quarterback situation.
Joe, you raise a lot of excellent Joe, you raise a lot of excellent and absolutely correct points. Certainly, Joe Douglas is a better general manager than John Idzik Jr. And Robert Saleh is a better head coach than Adam Gase. The question remains, and to your point about the structural organization of the team, it's obviously an indictment of the Johnson brothers that the head coach and the general manager reported directly to ownership for so long, whether it was Joe Douglas or the combination of Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh that affected that change. That is one of the most significant reasons why the New York Jets are running more proficiently as an organization otherwise than they have in a very long time, probably since the Rex Ryan era, as you stated. The question remains, and I don't think it's a question of talent. I do agree with you that the drafts, for the most part, Zach Wilson probably being a notable exception, have been really, really strong. The 2020 draft was not strong, but since then by Joe Douglas. But the glaring problem right now is that while the head coach has the possibility of being very good or great, he certainly established that he's not terrible. The offensive coordinator is quite possibly horrible. And I think that has been the challenge for the New York Jets this season, that and starting Zach Wilson from the beginning of the year instead of Mike White.
Ooh, we're going to get to all that in a second. But strong words, certainly. And we're going to talk about LaFleur. But I want to start with Mike White, right? And let's just start with this. What are we grading this guy? I want to hear everybody's grade from the game against Buffalo. Because that was he had to get that big game off his back. Last year was his undoing, certainly. And we talked about this, Johnny. Obviously, he was probably hurt off the Colts game. Probably shouldn't have even been in there when he did it, but he had his 4 interceptions last year. A very different story this year and how he played. And I mean, the toughness, insane, off the charts. All of us can agree how incredible that was, and we're all now certainly behind him, fan base included. But let's hear the grades. Let's start with Johnny. What do you grade him in that game?
I'll give him a B as far as of his football play. I'll give him an A++ for heart. I thought he had died twice on the football field. Mike White is not a gigantic human being.
Yeah.
He's 6'5", maybe 220. Something like that. He's not bulky, and they really nailed him twice into the turf. And I thought he was done. As you already know, I think that it's the philosophy of the Jets organization that they don't want Mike White playing at all, and to have an offensive tackle take a play off and get Mike White killed would be consistent with that conspiracy theory. But that aside, just giving all the credit in the world to the Buffalo Bills defense and the Swiss cheese ability at times anyway of the New York Jets offense, because players like Elijah Vera Tucker are on the golf course due to injury. Mike White in the elements, dealing with getting hit as often as he did, dealing with a bad offensive line, dealing with his offensive coordinator, getting away from the run once again. I'll give him a B overall. I hope that in better weather this Sunday against Detroit at New Giant Stadium, that the results are better and the Jets come away with a victory. But Mike White has definitely established himself as a legitimate starting quarterback of the National Football League.
Long Beach Joe.
Yeah, I'm giving him an A. And the reason that I'm giving him an A is because when you look at what you're facing, again, the Bills defense is probably the toughest defense in the league, if not, again, one of the top 3 or whatever you want to call them, right? So when you look at the situation, the New York Jets had an issue running the football, and that's been something that's been an issue in other games as well. So you're asking him to throw, I think he threw like 44 times in this game, right? So he's dropping back and he's getting pressured constantly. The offensive line was awful on the day, as Johnny said. It was terrible. They were letting up pressure left and right. He got crushed by Ed Oliver. He got destroyed by Milano, just destroyed. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like the hits
it was a Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah,
that's what it looked like.
He was just getting rocked. But the grit and the moxie that he showed and the ability to step back into that game after taking those shots, and not just taking the shots, he would come back and then deliver. Right after he took the first hit and left, he came back. I think it was on third down. It was like 3rd and 10. And he delivers a strike to Garrett Wilson for a first down.
By the way, he did that. I want to remind everybody, he did that last week too against Minnesota, right? He took that insane shot, was down, got the wind knocked out of him, came right back up, and the play later delivered where he needed to keep us in the game.
To Corey Davis. He delivered that strike to Corey Davis. Yeah. And so he proved, and it was another thing a lot of people were talking about as well. There's a lot of Jets fans, and again, I respect all Jets fans, that talk about Mike White and maybe his lack of arm strength, and he doesn't have as strong an arm as Zach Wilson. He can't throw outside the numbers and all that. In this game, he showed you he can do exactly that. There was a lot of throws that he made that were lasers, darts, that he was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I just, again, I know that we fell short, but from what I saw from him, going out there, putting everything on the line, making the throws, knowing that the hits are coming, and he's not shying away from it at all. He's delivering the ball with speed, with accuracy, knowing that the shots are coming. I can't give him anything but the A. The leadership, the ability, the moxie, the playmaking ability that we saw with his arm as well, even with everything that he had under duress, no Corey Davis, George Fant was gone at one point as well. I can't give him anything but an A.
Yeah, and,
I'm calling out his nonsense. Anyone who says that Mike White does not have a strong enough arm to be a quarterback in the National Football League. Joe, you said yourself that he started watching the Jets in 2000. That means you saw every Jets game of the Chad Pennington era. That is a quarterback who does not have a strong arm. That is a quarterback that cannot throw more than 10 yards on the line. Mike White established, and he can throw 20, 25 yards on the line. This whole dialogue, this whole propaganda, I don't know where it's coming from. Is Manish Mehta still working? I don't even know. But whoever is coming up with this nonsense, it is garbage. Mike White does not have a weak arm. Let's put that to bed. Thank you, Joe.
He doesn't, but it's so interesting you brought up the notion of outside the numbers, because I think if you go back and watch the game, I mean, watch the all-22, watch the replay, whatever you want to do, he was throwing balloon balls outside the numbers. But that's not a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's actually one thing Zach Wilson does well, and probably the only thing he does well is his ability to put the ball outside the numbers. That's where his numbers look the best. But Mike White was just as good throwing touch passes and timing routes and doing a great job of it. So it's fine. But to your point, Long Beach, I mean, he throws zip. I mean, when it was inside the numbers, when he had to go inside, he absolutely can have what he needs to in a cannon arm. Now, as far as, Johnny, what you're saying, to your point, yes, Pennington couldn't throw more than 10. At least White can do 20 to 25, do it well. And that's about where you need to live. I mean, maybe you're not going to see the 40, 50-yard bomb, and we'll see how much that comes into play. But there was something interesting about that. I mean, the Bills, who like to do a lot of cover two, kept creeping down one of their safeties and putting the hit on our running backs and putting the hit on Mike himself, because they were fine with the cover one, knowing that he wasn't necessarily going to beat you downfield with the long ball. But all that being said, I'm giving him a B+. I'm giving him an infinity for toughness. I mean, right off the bat, like, I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying for what he did as an actual quarterback, B+. And that's saying a lot, because his numbers weren't tremendous. I mean, you look at it, 61.5% completion, 6.1% average, 56.4 on the QBR, and 78.6 on the RTG. You look at that, and you're going to say, hey, that's a C minus day. So what? It was still B+ stuff. Because, I mean, the first half of that game, the wind, the rain, the snow, you've got defenses out there on both sides of the ball looking to kill each other, and they were, certainly. He took 2 big shots. His offensive line was not getting it done for him, but he still put up almost 300 yards. Yet again, he still had us in the game at the key moments. Yet again, he delivered some great balls, spread the ball around. He had 6 and 6 to Wilson and Moore, his two big guys, and he lost Davis early in the game. A solid B+. I mean, he firmly entrenched himself as the starter. Yeah. What he does need to still learn how to do is win. And that's a tough thing. And then I think that's ultimately going to come. I mean, it happened in the Minnesota game, and it happened here again. You know, he didn't win. He didn't win the game. And you want to have a knock on him about that, which is why I'd keep him out of the A category. And it's something to be said, because if you are in an NFL quarterback and you're leading a team, especially one in the playoff hunt, you still got to learn how to win. Again, that's whether that's on him or that comes back to LaFleur. I'm just going to say it, but still, B+ for sure. And he's absolutely a starter. He's absolutely our starting quarterback, and he's absolutely a starter in this league, no doubt about it. Let's move on. I'm giving up another category, a tale of 2 linebackers. And Long Beach, you mentioned him already. And I'll start with these guys, Matt Milano and CJ Mosley, 2 guys on the other side of the ball. And we talked about this, Johnny, right? I mean, I said it last week. Before it began, I was very concerned about Matt Milano coming back. I mean, he was a guy who was not part of the first game, and there he was, way more than Von Miller, way more than anybody else, Tre'Davious White. I mean, anybody who was coming back for the Bills, Matt Milano is, in my opinion, probably the best linebacker in the game today. He really is. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy. He makes you very nervous when he comes up and puts a stick hit on any of your running backs. And obviously, we saw what he did to Mike and took him out, the way he took him out of that game. He's just incredible. But his numbers, I mean, let's look at these. Milano, 7 solo tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 hell of a hit. CJ Mosley, also 7 solo tackles, 1 beyond dumb play, and 2 incredible end of the game plays. And that's something to be said about Mosley. And I want to hear from you guys, but yes, he made a terrible play. I don't know what you say to a long-term veteran like that. He knows better. He knows what he did, obviously. I mean, he's the heart and soul of the middle of your defense right there. He's your Mike linebacker, and he's a vet. I mean, you're not going to put him in the doghouse for something like that. He's too good of a guy. It's like Hopkins last night, running with the ball. I mean, he's your best player, right? Like, I mean, he shouldn't have the ball out the way that he does, and he knows it. He says, yeah, it's my bad. Same thing with Mosley. These things happen. It happened at a terrible time. It was a turnover, but man, at the end of the game, again, I mean, the coverage and what his biggest knock on him, right? To get back there and make that play on first down and knock the ball away was unbelievable. And then on third down, he just blows up the lineman and takes Allen out at the legs to keep us and get us that ball back. I mean, there's a few guys in the league who could do that. Mosley, even at 30 years old, is one of them. Let's hear your thoughts.
To me, that's an indictment of the defensive coordinator and the head coach. I don't care. On 4th and short like that critical point in the game, in the second quarter, I believe it was still 0-0. That would have ended that would have prevented the Bills from scoring a touchdown, which they ultimately scored due to that penalty. It's incumbent upon the coaching staff, and this rests ultimately on Robert Saleh, to get everyone on the field knowing under no circumstances are you getting a penalty on this play. Absolutely not. And the fact that was allowed to happen is an indictment of the coach. CJ Mosley, I don't care how long he's been in the league. I don't care whether he's going to get a gold jacket or whether it's first came in the league. You take that whole unit aside and you tell them we are not getting a penalty on this play. End of story.
Yeah, I see your point, Johnny. And again, this has been something that has plagued the Jets this season, though. And not only this season, but last season. Penalties in critical moments to help people extend drives. We've seen this. Offsides penalties, pass interference penalties, what we've seen in this game as well from Michael Carter, too. We saw it last season, too, where they would be heavily penalized, and it would help push opponents' drives continuing forward. We can get them off the field. I understand, yes, part of it is on Saleh because these penalties have been an issue, especially in the past. But at the same time, CJ Mosley is a veteran linebacker in this league. He's been in this league long enough to know on 4th and 1, the Bills are not going to snap this ball. They're not going to. That's just not what's going to happen. They had been battling and struggling as well to get down the field against our defense the same way we had struggled to get down the field against their defense. They were not going to snap that ball. So in no circumstance, again, he's been with the Ravens. We've seen him, push and go to playoffs, all that stuff. You've been in this league long enough to know that. So if you know that, you cannot come flying over the line because a guy in motion gets under center. You cannot do that. So I understand putting it on Saleh, but I put a lot of it on CJ Mosley because he is a veteran backer in this league. So he's got to know better out there on the field.
Good points, all of them. Let's move on to someone who personally I'm a little disappointed by, mostly because of his availability. He was a guy that I wanted the Jets to go get a couple of years ago. They did, and in some moments he's looked fantastic, and we were talking about him a couple of episodes as well. I'm going to bring up his name in a moment, but a big difference when he's on the field, especially in the run game, that's Corey Davis. And here's a guy, a big-bodied receiver, a 50-50 can win ball guy. He makes great plays. He's there when you need him. And again, he's tremendous as a downfield blocker. He's tremendous on the line, almost as the swing tackle for you for a lot of the run game. But again, I mean, yet another injury, another time when he's not going to be in this game. And more than likely when that happens, you're not going to see him moving forward in this coming game. And as much as we all want Mims to be the guy, and maybe he will, I mean, he's got to get 36% better immediately if he's going to be Corey Davis, right? Because they're similar in size, and the ability to do what he does. But there's a reason he hasn't been on the field and was in the doghouse for as long as he was, right? I mean, doesn't know the routes nearly as well, can't block nearly as well, made some bad penalty plays, way more than Corey Davis does. But man, I mean, where are we with this guy? I mean, is he a long-term part of this team when you got Wilson and you got Moore as good as they are, or what could we really expect out of him the rest of the year?
Yeah.
Long Beach?
Yeah. So listen, I love Corey Davis. Everyone knows that. But your best ability is availability. And if he's not out there on the field, at some point, I could see the New York Jets moving on from him. Because if it's not, I think he had a hip issue last year and he missed a ton of time last season. This season, he had some injuries as well. I think it was a knee injury, an MCL injury that is costing him some time. Now he comes back and now it's a concussion, and we'll see what happens going forward, a hand injury, something like that. So we'll see what happens going forward with him. But if he's not going to be out there on the field with the emergence of guys like you said as well, Elijah Moore, who is becoming more part of the offense every single week, especially since Mike White has been out there as a New York Jets starting quarterback. Finally, a guy is finding him when he's open. But I tell you what, the emergence of Garrett Wilson has been unbelievable. And I think that kind of opens the door for the New York Jets to possibly move on from Corey Davis when the time comes. I would love Corey Davis to be here. He's a guy I really like. Like you said as well, big body. Not only that, he can block. He's one of the better blocking wide receivers on this football team. That helps within our running game, which helps within our scheme. But man, he don't play. He don't play. So if you're not playing and we're still producing offensively without you, it's going to come to a point where it's like, hey, why are we paying this guy so much when he's never out there? So that becomes a question.
Yeah, I do agree in the case of Davis that the best ability is availability. I disagree that that's the case when you're talking about Michael Carter, the running back. If Michael Carter was not available, then maybe we'd see Ty Johnson. We would have won this football game.
I like that little stick it to the man right there, a little jab at the moment. On the other side of the ball, somebody who I thought was taking a little too much flack on social media this past week. I don't know if you saw Carl Lawson's name pop up, but all of a sudden everybody's kind of pointing at him as he's not really stepping up. He's not worth the contract. He's not doing enough on the side of the ball. Well, let's take a look. I mean, let's go inside the numbers and see that 2020, right, when he was on the Bengals, that's the year that got him paid, bringing him over to the Jets. 5.5 sacks, 36 combined tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, and 32 QB hits. And I think that's what he's really mostly known for, right? The pressure, the QB hits, even though the sacks weren't there.
Yep.
2022, coming off an Achilles injury, okay? And I don't want anybody to forget how ridiculous that is for NFL athletes to have to come back and be good and elite the next year. But here are his numbers. 6 sacks. So 4 games to go. He's already got half a sack more than he was in his 2020 year. 24 combined tackles. That's 12 less than he had in 2020. 6 tackles for a loss. That's 2 more than he had in 2020 that got him paid. 19 QB hits. Again, 32 QB hits. So maybe the pressures aren't there as much. But let's look at this as well. And here's the big key to me. When he was on Cincinnati, he played 68% of the snaps, defensive snaps. In this scheme, as we know, with the big rotation, only 60. 8% is a big number when you're not on the field. Personally, I think he's producing. I think he's looking very good. I think there's a lot of times when he's being held and he's not getting that call, which he should be. And at key moments in the game, he's made a lot of good plays. I'm a fan. I want to keep him. I think he's been worth the money. Johnny?
Oh, yeah, I agree. Carl Lawson is a legitimate football player. Any kind of ad hominem attacks on him I don't think are appropriate. But I think it's a bigger indictment overall of the Jets defense as a unit. The last 3 games against the Bears, against the Vikings, and this past Sunday against the Bills, they've just not been good enough. And at times they've been terrible. So I don't know whether that's on the defensive coordinator, on Robert Saleh's defensive-minded head coach, but these Jets have a propensity, like the Rex Ryan defenses did, to give up a big, long drive at key moments in the game, and they've had real problems defending the run the last 3 weeks as well. If the Jets are going to win 3 or 4 of their next 4 games to try to make the playoffs, then this defense has to raise their game to a level which we have not seen in a very long time.
Well, I love Carl Lawson. I think he's producing well. I think he's a big piece to the puzzle that is the New York Jets defensive line and getting pass rush here. He's a guy that, and we're seeing, again, the emergence of Quinnen Williams has been big, and I think that's because the addition of Carl Lawson this season. Because you can't double team Quinnen no more. I mean, you can if you want to, and then you're going to get scorched by Carl Lawson or Sheldon Rankins, who's been playing very well as well. Again, he's just recently come back from a elbow injury that he had. So I think that everything's fine. There was people bashing Sauce. I don't know if you guys saw that too. People bashing Sauce as well after the Bills game. Look, the Bills were not spectacular offensively against us. They weren't. I think Josh Allen only had 147 yards throwing the football against us. He wasn't amazing at all. He had like 40-something yards rushing and a touchdown. A lot of that was due to our front absolutely putting pressure on him and making sure that, hey, you're not just going to have a free time to get the football up out of there. He had a lot of pressure on him as well. We sacked him 3 times on the day too. So the Bills offense didn't just take off against us. Carl Lawson's doing fine. He's coming off, like you said as well, the big injury, and everything's good to go. I just think, again, we're going to take these losses from time to time, but the pass rush and the play is there. You watch these games, he's getting after it, man.
Anyone bashing Sauce can sit down. His numbers were elite. Yet again, he was phenomenally shut down. Dick made a massive play yet again, covering down the field on the bomb and took it out of his hands. This is ridiculous. I mean, he is as good as it gets. The man is the top 2, if not the best corner in the league. Ridiculous.
Crew chief, I am telling you, there's people crushing him on social media, saying he's bad. And there again, all due respect, some of them are Jets fans.
It's rhetoric. So, that's
right. Well, I'm a Jets fan. I'm not bashing Sauce Gardner. I don't think that that's appropriate. But what I did say before the Buffalo game is that the NFL has sufficiently figured out Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, and that was borne out by the game by the Bills against the Jets this past Sunday. Sauce Gardner making so many tackles in the first half against the Bills was just indicative of the fact that the Bills running backs and receivers were getting open and making plays, and it was left to the defensive back to make the tackle. If you go back to 1996, I believe it was Ray Mickens on the Coat-Tight Jets that led all Jets in tackles. That's just a sign that the defense is not sufficient. So Sauce Gardner's ability as a football player, I don't think it's appropriate to attack that. But if you want to downgrade his impact against opposing offenses, just being on the field, I think that has been reduced slightly just because teams have gotten film on him. They've seen him in the jet scheme, and they've seen what you need to do with a Sauce Gardner on the field to get around Sauce Gardner. I think that's what's appropriate. Just to say he can't play or he's not great, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, but and I hear what you're saying, Johnny, and I respect your point. But listen, Stephon Diggs had 37 yards on the day. Gabe Davis had 31. He's a corner. That's what they should do. They shut down wide receivers. So guys are not getting off against him at all. He's facing some of the top tier wide receivers this year. And they're not getting off on him at all. He's one of the better corners in the league. Some people say he's the best corner in the league. That's what I personally think, but I'm a Jets fan, so people call me a homer when I say that. But if you look at how he's handling business out here, these guys aren't getting 150-something yards. Stephon Diggs is one of the best wide receivers in the league. 37 yards on the day. Their backs are going to catch the ball. That's what Singletary and all those guys do. But guess what? They're making plays and stopping. Again, Josh Allen only had, I think, 147 yards throwing the football. He didn't go off either. So he's making plays.
Sauce and Reed were phenomenal again. I mean, and to your point, Johnny, I mean, if anything, it's a testament to how good they are on what you're talking about on how to figure out the defenses, because you're attacking the safeties again. These Pointer and Whitehead at the first 3 games of the year, PFF, were 2 of the worst safeties in the league. They figured it out. They came back. They were playing pretty well. And look. Again, they went to Knox and they went to McKenzie, out of the slot in the middle of the field, attacking the safeties when they had any level of success there. But no, the cornerbacks are exceptional. And again, this comes down and kind of our next topic here, the tale of 2 Carters, right? I mean, Michael Carter II had his 2 penalties. And if you want to blame anybody a little bit on that side of the ball, you can go with him. But okay, his year has been exceptional as well. Really the guy we should be talking about, and I kind of want to hear your thoughts on both these guys, obviously, but unfortunately, Michael Carter, the running back, some pretty big drop-off, obviously. I mean, he's dealing with some struggles, and he's had to kind of go through it. He got relegated to second man, and he looked really good in that position when Brees was his guy, but all of a sudden, Zonovan's here, James Robinson's here, the emergence of Ty Johnson, especially catching balls out of the backfield. But, I mean, to me, I still think Michael Carter is as the running back, is a very valuable piece. He just had a bad game. I don't know. I feel like, Johnny, you're about to tell us something different.
You can't forgive a bad game at this juncture of the season. Michael Carter, the running back, as opposed to Michael Carter II, the not running back, should not be on the field anymore. The Jets have a dearth of running backs. They traded a draft pick to get Robinson. Let him play if he can hold on to the football. Why he was in that game at that point, I don't know. I watched the tape to the extent that I could, as much as I could. I don't think that there was really a replay on that Carter fumble. If there was, please let me know. It wasn't clear to me that the ball came out before he hit the ground, and I didn't hear anything from Romo Hernandez to that point. But if it's in fact the case that he did fumble that football and it was a legitimate fumble, then that he should be benched for the rest of the year. I mean, this is just unconscionable. It's bad coaching, it's bad playing, it's bad everything. At that juncture of the game, Mike White has come back from the dead twice. They're about to put points on the board. They're in a position where they can win this football and keep their playoff hopes alive. And this player unilaterally, along with other players unilaterally on their own, destroying this game or the chances of the game, he ruins that chance for the Jets to score a touchdown at that point in a cold frozen tundra artificial of former Rich Stadium. It was horrible, and he's got to account for it.
Long Beach, before you go for a second, it was definitely a fumble, unfortunately to say. I remember watching it live, and they did show the replay at the time, and it was clearly a fumble. Your thoughts on the matter, Long Beach Joe?
Yeah. and I hear you, Johnny. And again, I respect that take. But, I'm a guy, again, I watched the game just like you, Crew Chief. And that definitely was a fumble. They did a little bit of a replay on it, and you could see that the ball came out. Michael Carter, again, is a guy that I really, really like. I talked about him before coming into the season. Even when people were screaming for Breece Hall to be the starter, I was the guy saying, listen, Michael Carter still needs the football in his hands. Let's allow him to handle business and be the guy. Breece Hall, did play extremely well, absolutely deserved the snaps that he got, ran the ball well first before he went down for an injury. Michael Carter did not have his best game yesterday. Okay, I think he ran for like 5 yards. I think he only
5 for 5. 5 carries, 5 yards.
Then he caught like 3 catches for 15 yards. He just, it just wasn't his best game. But again, we've seen this guy show up and show out before for us. He's just got to bounce back. If you go back to last season when Mike White came in against the Bengals, he was the sole reason why we won that game. He did everything in that game. From catching the ball in space, getting gone. When Mike White was looking for somebody to get the football to, he was the check down guy, and he was taking off and handling business. So we've seen Michael Carter be better than this. I don't think he needs to be benched for the season, but I do think, he's got to step it up. Now, I'll tell you this, Bam Knight has been a guy that has really been exciting this season. Fresh pair of legs. We've elevated him off the practice squad, and he has really shown us something. And this was a guy that I was confused about why they put him on the practice squad to begin with, because he was showing out in the preseason. He was a guy that was really putting things together. Has 71 yards and a touchdown for us yesterday. We're seeing him really play well. Again, James Robinson, healthy and active again. He's a guy that's looking a little slow when they hand him the football. So Knight running the way that he has, Carter needs to step it up. And Ty Johnson has been a bit surprising as well, especially his play in the Bears game, because he's a guy that I thought was going to get cut at one point too. So we'll see how they handle business going forward. But Michael Carter can bounce back. I have faith in him.
Ty Johnson, too good at catching balls out of the backfield. Mike White loves to find him, and that's a big boon for the Jets. And Carter specifically is just as good, if not better, catching balls. And I want to remind everybody about him. He's still a yards after contact guy, and the numbers are still there this year when he gets the ball. I mean, again, he's just not getting nearly as much touches. I mean, when you're the featured back, when you're getting 15, 20, 25 touches a game, whatever it may be, you get going throughout the game. He doesn't even have that opportunity to do that. But, I mean, he's made the most of his opportunities. And in the first Bills game, he and Robinson as the 1-2 punch were phenomenal. All is forgiven. I don't want to bench him for the year, but, Johnny, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about the call to kick the field goal at the time that we did. All right. That's a big one. On paper, probably the right call, right? Because in the NFL, you give your team the chance. You put the points on the board and you give your team the chance to win, because obviously if you don't make the first down, you are completely out of the game at that point in time. However, with that being said, it wasn't goal to go. There was still an opportunity to get that 1 yard and get the first down. And however, the Jets are the worst team in the league on 3rd and 1 to 3 yards. And there was a graphic during the game that showed it. All of us who are real fans know it. And that's a problem and something Saleh's got to think about. And that falls squarely back, Johnny, on your man, LaFleur, for sure. But do we think we should have gone for it? Or are you cool with the fact that we kicked the field goal at that time?
One word, gutless. I put this on Robert Saleh. I mean, there are times in a season that define the whole season, that define the organization. You're not playing against a nondescript team at the beginning of the year in perfect conditions where you really don't know what's on the line. You're playing against the current number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs, the leader of the AFC East, a division rival that has had its way in the division for a very long time. You have an opportunity on their field, in their house, to go for it and get it and get back in the game and to win the game. And it showed cowardice, and it showed playing not to lose by Coach Robert Saleh. You want to put it on the floor? He's not innocent in this, but this is a decision that has to be made by the head coach, and that coach is head coach Robert Saleh. It was gutless, it was embarrassing, and it was a real sign of surrender to all of Jets universe. Long Beach Joe, your thoughts?
Well, hold on, Long Beach. I want to give you thoughts, but I want to give you the last word on this, because I'm going to jump back in, and you should absolutely have the last word and wrap up this segment particularly. But you know what, Johnny? I agree with you on this one. I think I think they should have gone for it. On paper, it was the right call. Never take your team out of the game. I'm a pragmatic guy. You know it. But at this time, on the road, at this time of the season, and when it matters most, you got to go for it. And you got to get that yard. But there was something else going on that really, I go back and I think about it. And I don't think he's getting enough flack for it. Elijah, he should have had that first down on the second down catch. It was a really good play on first down. It was actually designed correctly by LaFleur to get the 7 yards on the swing pass to the tailback. White does a great job leading his man there. But, this is my knock on Elijah. I mean, last week it was the missed toe drag, against the Minnesota game. And when he could have had that play, he is, amazing. He really is a phenomenal football player. I love him. I want him on the field as much as possible. I want him catching. I want 10 balls to go his way. His separation is there. His route running is crisp. He's a yards after catch guy, certainly, but there's something about him sometimes where the effort, and I wonder if it goes back to the fact that, he asked for the trade and what's going on there. And we know there's a lot of people who get it. He's a me first guy. But man, I mean, he's got to make that play. Who was it? I wrote it down here. It was Taron Johnson, who's a decent enough cornerback and he's playing well, who stuck him there. But you go back and you watch that play, it wasn't the biggest stick hit in the world. And it wasn't like Elijah snuck under and got that first down or made the big enough effort to get that first down, which is a huge, huge, huge play. When you catch that ball and when you're at the sticks and it was right there at the sticks, you've got to get it done. And again, I mean, he's throughout his career over these 2 years, the 50-50 balls have not been great for Elijah Moore. Again, when he's got the separation, when he's running crisp routes, when he's catching the ball in space, he's phenomenal. And he has all of those attributes. He's Antonio Brown-like in that respect. He can do all of those things. But if he wants to elevate and he wants to be part of a tough team, the team that Sal is building, the mentality we're talking about, you got to do better on that. I'm putting a lot of that drive on him before we even get to the Barrios, miss or the fact that we had to kick that field goal. Yeah. We're going to give you the last thoughts on all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and I hear you there, Crew Chief, about that 2nd and 5 call where I understand a lot of people look at it and say he should have got that first, but the way he caught the football, it kind of got into his body and then he was kind of stumbling backwards as well. So I could kind of see, why he wasn't able to pick it up. But I tell you what, the New York Jets struggling in the red zone has been a huge issue this season. You go back to the Vikings game, I think we were 1 for 6 in the red zone. You come back here, we're at the 9 on 3rd and 1, and you line up in shotgun. Why? Why are we lining up in shotgun? Why are we doing that? Why are we not lining up every big person on the Jets sideline in the building and going goal line and running for that 1 yard? We are a power running football team. That's what we do. That's our identity. Why are we getting so cute at the Buffalo 9? Why are we not running a QB sneak like everybody else in the league would do? Why are we not doing those things? And that's where my frustration with Mike LaFleur comes from. I think he gets too cute in the red zone. I think there's been a lot of issues this year play calling wise. There's some issues in this game play calling wise as well, going towards the end of the game where I thought we're doing too much. Now, the decision to kick the field goal, as a fan, would I want him to go for it? Yes, but I understand it. So I'm not going to kill him for it. I know Johnny says he's gutless. I respect that. Okay. I respect you as well, Crew Chief. But I understand that. You get the points. You come back. If you can get yourself a score and a 2-point conversion, boom, you're in the game. All right, I get it. So I don't necessarily hate the decision, but I do hate the play calling that led up to making that decision because we could have easily have picked up that first. It's the same thing we saw against the Vikings. We were with their 1 yard line, and we're trying to throw passes and on 3rd down. It's the same stuff. I have issues with LaFleur when he gets in the red zone. He's got to clean it up.
Yeah, all that. Let's move on to Quinnen. And I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. I mean, we all know how amazing he's been this year. He's all pro. He's it's him and probably Simmons down in Tennessee, who are easily the 1-2 best defensive tackles this year. No offense to our man here in LA, Aaron Donald is still the best of the best. But Quinnen's he's all pro. He's the number 1 guy. He really, I mean, to your point, he had 11 sacks. He had 2 early in the game. He's just unbelievable. He's unstoppable. He is a force. He tilts the field. We're going to miss him. Is he going to play this? This is really just a big question. What do we think? I mean, is he going to play this weekend? Long Beach? What do you think? Are we going to see him on the field?
I hope we do, but the thing is with that calf injury, and thank goodness it's only a calf injury because we thought the worst, non-contact football injury. We all thought it was an ACL. I don't want them to rush him back. Whenever he is fully ready to go, that's when I want to see him out on that field. I don't want him out there next week or this upcoming game unless he's ready to go. And again, they keep saying he's 50-50. but he has been dominant this season. This is a guy that we had one of the biggest question marks about him coming into the season. There was contract that we were talking about. If he doesn't get it done, he probably is going to be out of here. There was people that wanted to trade him before the season started. I remember that. Like it was yesterday. People were saying, hey, anything we can get for him, get him out of here. Man, he has shown up big for us. And he's one of the bigger reasons why our pass rush has been so ferocious this season. So I love Quinnen, love what he brings. Don't want to see him out there until he's fully healthy. What are your thoughts, Johnny?
Well, as we know, there's been no bigger critic of the Jets coaching staff than Quinnen Williams. In fact, on field during a game, he cursed out his own defensive coordinator. So you got to give all the props in the world to Quinnen Williams. He's having a great all-pro year. There's no doubt about that. As to whether he's going to play this week, being injured, there's two schools of thinking. I haven't figured out where I land on that. I'll try to think it through. On one hand, the Jets want to win this game. They want their best players to play. Quinnen Williams is certainly amongst their best players, probably their best player on defense. And for that reason, you would think that the Jets would have him start if he can play at all. The conspiracy theory in me says that if the Jets go down to defeat to the Detroit Lions, then Quinnen Williams not playing will be a very easy excuse for one Jets drive in Florham Park to put out in their press releases. How can you expect us to win a football game without Quinnen Williams? We'll see what happens.
Last question here, or last topic before we get to the questions segment. Our man, Zach Wilson, should he be the active QB2 moving forward? Now, I think we all agree, before we even get there, it's White's job, right? I mean, he has played 3 very good, if not extremely good games for the most part. We know the Chicago game was phenomenal. He had a tougher first half against Minnesota, but he showed up in that second half. And again, same thing here. I mean, the toughness, the level, the abilities, it's a different offense. I mean, all that. Just putting the pieces together. We wish we had him since the beginning of the year. Might have a very different look and feel in the offense right now, and to be running something different because they're figuring out on the fly when you've got a new guy in there, obviously. But, I mean, Flacco was in there for, 2 plays all game. One of them was just one of the most catastrophic things that can happen in any game, especially when you're on the road, especially when you're playing the AFC East soon-to-be champion. So should he even dress? Do we put Streveler and elevate him to QB2, or is Zach Wilson QB2 now? Because, again, there's no pressure on White, right? Like, if he did what he needed to against Buffalo. Like, if you put him in there, you're not expecting to see Wilson unless White, really does die on the field. I mean, it's should he be – but – I guess what I'm asking is, like, should Wilson have the chance? I mean, do we want to just shut him down, get him off the Jets entirely, or do we bring him back and make him QB2, or do you elevate Streveler and Flacco? Here's your watch in retirement. Thanks for playing. We did enjoy you on the team. Where are we at, Johnny?
Well, my thought as to whether Zach Wilson should dress as the backup against the Detroit Lions this Sunday, as opposed to Joe Flacco being the backup, is as follows. Does Joe Flacco have the ability to play better this Sunday than Joe Flacco played against the Bills this past Sunday? The answer is obviously yes. Does Zach Wilson have the ability to play better than Joe Flacco played this past Sunday against the Bills? The answer is no, he doesn't. Okay. And if we are going to move Zach Wilson at the end of this season, if we are going with if we are going with Mike White and we are moving on from Zach Wilson and we want to get something back from Zach Wilson, we absolutely cannot put Zach Wilson back on the field this year. If Zach Wilson had played in the game in Buffalo, the Bills would have won 40-0, even in that weather. Okay. The reason Mike White was getting killed is because the Jets offensive line is Swiss cheese. Zach Wilson's response to that is to run backwards. At least Mike White was getting killed 3 lines behind the line of scrimmage instead of 35 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I don't want to see Zach Wilson again this year. If they can trade him, if they can get him a 3 or a 2 for him at the end of the year, then God bless and go play for another team. But to put him on the field, to dress him as the backup, even for a couple of plays when Mike White gets hurt, because Mike White is going to get hurt again because he has no protection and he's Mike White. That is going to be a big problem for the Jets. I don't want to see Zach Wilson again.
Long Beach.
Yeah, look, I actually am, and again, I want to be very clear. I'm a Zach Wilson guy, but I absolutely am also a realist, and I keep everything in a realist perspective. He was terrible this season. That's why Mike White is starting, and I think he should be the starter. Absolutely. I'm 100% behind Mike White. I do think that they should dress Zach Wilson as a second QB. If you watch Joe Flacco in that game, he looks so old and stiff. He looked like he belongs in a retirement home. It's time to go to Shady Pines. It's time to relax and just have a good time for the rest of the time you're here. All right. It's over for Joe Flacco. He doesn't look like he's even like really, mentally out there. It's just it's time to go on. Zach Wilson should be the number 2 QB from here on out. Not saying that he should challenge to have Mike White's job. I'm not saying that. I am saying that in case White goes down, Zach should be the guy going for it. And again, he's a guy that we've invested a lot in as well. High pick in the first round. We've got to see something, in case anything happens. We got to see if this guy has something, if he can bring us something. Again, I know people are talking about going forward. Yes, he should be, competing for the job, or whatever happens in the offseason happens in the offseason. But he should be the number 2 QB here.
I'm going with Johnny here. I think pedigree notwithstanding, number 2 picks, none of that stuff at this point even matters, especially when you've got teams just giving up first rounder after first rounder just to get a Jalen Ramsey on the team. And, to me, it's like he's not the guy. It's 20 games. It really went south. I wanted to believe in him. I thought when he came back in the Pittsburgh game and led us, and that's, you talk about winning and learning how to winning. I mean, that was huge. And then he had a really nice game in Miami. He was the field general when need him to be, but obviously it was week after week after that, showcasing why he's unfortunately not a starting level quarterback. The decision, and to your point, Johnny, we talked about it a lot, running backwards, running sideways. I mean, these are not, NFL level plays. He's just not big enough. He doesn't want to step up in pressure. I can't even imagine him doing what Mike White did. And again, in that Patriots game, that second Patriots game especially, it was a nothing. And it just showed. I mean, when you watch the All-22, he can't see the field, and that's a problem. You're not going back to the drawing board for a couple of weeks. And Johnny, you kind of make a good point about the notion, get something for him. And if you're putting him back in the field, you're not. You're reminding everybody what you shouldn't be getting for him. Let him be a reclamation project somewhere else. And you're not getting a second or third rounder for him. And I don't care if it's a 5th or 6th, but he probably should be somewhere else. And it's not an indictment on him, because I like Zach Wilson as a person. I mean, there's some stories about him that leaked out that, show that maybe his head's not really there, but I don't buy into any of that. To me, he was a guy who showed up. He was one of the first guys in the building. He was one of the last guys to leave. He put in the work. But, it's just not there. And I don't want to see him out there. And I don't want to see Flacco either. I'd rather see Streveler. I'd rather see him being our backup. Wow. He's a guy who can, honestly, I want to see someone who can fling the ball around. It's like a Bailey Zappi coming from Mac Jones. I want to see someone who can fling the ball around. And these guys with their pedigree can do that. And that's what the offense could be. It should be a run first offense, but if you need it to be, let somebody, who can do it and do it a different way. Long Beach, you got your hand up. You want to say something?
Yeah, here's the thing, and I understand that, and I get it, and that's what, again, even though I support Zach Wilson, he was the guy that when we took, I was excited about it. He's not necessarily the guy I wanted in the draft. I wanted Justin Fields, but we ended up with him. I was okay with that, and I've been supporting him since. But here's the deal with him, and again, people talk about Streveler. We'll see what happens with him going forward. He was great in the preseason. If you guys truly want to get rid of him and you want to trade him after the season, as Johnny has spoken about, I've talked with a lot of fans that want to do that as well. I think you have to see at least what you have in him. If Mike White goes down, I'm not saying start him over Mike White. If Mike White goes down, you at least have to see, before you finally close the door on him, is he good after the reset? And having him as the number 2 quarterback will, if Mike White goes down, will show you something. Can he come in and just sustain the offense? We're not asking him to do a whole lot. We're not asking him to go out there and go crazy, throw for 300. No. Can you sustain the offense if Mike White goes down? Can you be a guy that's even in the talk of possibly competing for the job in the offseason before we finally shut the door on you? If you're trying to trade him right now, you're not going to get much of anything for him, because the last time we saw him, like you said, he was running backwards in Denver. He was spinning around like a ballerina. He was making horrible decisions against the Patriots, throwing 3 picks. And then after a game, doubling down, saying he was tired of playing boring football. He wants to play it. Basically, I want to play it my way. So that's why I'm just saying, as the number 2, I think it will open doors, not just because, again, I think the arm's better than Flacco, the athleticism better than Flacco. You saw when Flacco come in, got sacked, fumble immediately. Zach Wilson will be able to get away from that pressure. And I'm not saying he's a great decision maker. I'm not a Zach apologist. I will tell you, he is bad. He turns the football over. He misses guys that are wide open. He can't hit a screen pass. He's throwing balls in the dirt.
You can't throw the ball short. Again, the athleticism there. He can run out of the pocket when he's running forward. All of that's there. He can play a good high-low game, and he's got the outside the numbers ability. He can't see the field. He's just not big enough to even put out there and let him run. So.
And I'll give you the final word on this, crew chief. But the question is, who is he after the reset? Is he that same guy? If we make him the number 2, and we see what he does. If he's that same guy, okay, door closed. Said and done. It's no question. If Mike White goes down and he comes in and he looks like the same guy that he did before the reset, it's over.
Johnny?
Joe, I absolutely agree with you that we don't know what he is after the reset. And I think that's why we can get something for him in a trade in the offseason, because the other teams, the National Football League, they also don't know what Zach Wilson is after the reset. Exactly. If he goes out and he plays for the Jets this season after this reset, then two things can happen, and only one of them is good. Either he's better, he's reset to his benefit and the team's benefit, and he shows that he can play football, or he's just as bad or he's even worse. So then, the potential of getting a 2 or a 3 for Zach Wilson goes to like maybe getting, I don't know, not even a 7. I don't know what they would get for him. If he's terrible, if he comes out after this reset, it means he's completely incompetent. I don't want to see that, especially during a playoff drive. This is not the time to hold Zach Wilson's hand and give him the backup job when Mike White goes down. Mike White is going to go down, whether it's just for one play or whether it's for a whole game. He's not a big guy. He's going to get hit. The offensive line is Swiss cheese. So, this is not the time to find out about Zach Wilson. It's the time to maintain the mystery of Zach Wilson. We've reset him. We've reset him. We've reset him from the quarterback who was terrible against the Patriots in both games, but the worst in the second half against the second Patriot game. 3 yards of offense, blew the game for the Jets, cost the Jets probably the playoffs in those 2 games. And I want to ask your thoughts on that, Joe. If the Jets don't make the playoffs this year, whatever number of games they win, do you consider this year a good year, or do you consider this year a disappointment?
So just really quickly on the Zach Wilson before I answer your question. That's a great question. Here's the deal. I don't think you watched the game yesterday. Joe Flacco wasn't that much better either.
And put in Strebler. Put in Denzel Mims as an emergency quarterback. I don't want to see Zach Wilson.
Look, and listen, and I get it, but here's the deal. Again, I don't think Joe Flacco is amazing at all. You saw him get sacked. He fumbled immediately. He's throwing wild balls too. My thing with Zach Wilson is again, after this reset, who is he? We know that he can be better. We've seen better Zach Wilson. We've seen the flashes. I just want to see who he is, and at some point we have to. A 2 or a 3 for Zach Wilson at this point, in my opinion, you're not getting that. You're not getting that. He hasn't shown. Listen, Zach Wilson to this point is worse than Sam Darnold was by far. Sam never had the weapons, Sam never had the coaching, and Sam never had the offensive line that Zach Wilson had. There was no excuse for him to be unsuccessful in the offense this season. Not one. Not one. We can literally win games just handing the ball off and you just taking care of the ball. You can't even do that. You're not getting a 2 or 3 for Zach Wilson. I don't give a crap where you picked it. So that's not happening, okay? So if you want that 2 or 3, you have to at least have him go out there and show you that he can be competent. More competent than we saw him before, which would lead to making him the backup, which I think that he can hold on to the game if he is asked to do backup duty. But that's as far as I think you get with him. Now, getting to your question, Johnny, which was an amazing question. If the Jets do not make the playoffs this year, was this a good year for us? Absolutely. I understand why some Jets fans will say no, because you're not in the dance. But guess what? We're a heck of a lot closer to the dance than we've been in years. The emergence of the young guys from, we talk about Jermaine Johnson. We talk about Sauce on a weekly basis. We talk about Garrett Wilson. We talk about Elijah Moore. All these guys have shown us clear ability this season. There is clearly defined issues on the New York Jets now. It's not just everything. Remember when it was everything? We need corners. We need wide receivers. We know what we need now. Our linebacking core is going to need a little work in the offseason. We know people talk about safeties. People talk about our offensive line is clearly going to need work. We're still trying to figure out if Mike White is the guy going forward. But even with Mike White, we're seeing offensive success. We have an identity now. We have an identity. We haven't had an identity in years. So you have so many questions answered already, and we're still building. I think the New York Jets, honestly, are a year ahead as far as in, within the build, getting better within, looking like how we want to look. We're years ahead of where we thought we were going to be. This was a question mark year. Well, it's not just a question mark year. This could possibly be a playoff year for us, what tells me we're not that far off, especially when we're competing with teams that are Super Bowl contenders. So I think that it's a good year, even if we don't make the playoffs, because of how we've looked and how we fought, how we played, and the players that have stepped up. What are your thoughts, Johnny?
Well, it was certainly Robert Saleh at the Senior Bowl early this year that said that this year 2 for Robert Saleh would not be a playoff year, and it would really be year 3 that would be the playoffs. So that is all consistent with Robert Saleh's outset before the season started. But the fact of the matter is that things changed when the Jets went on their winning streak and they started accumulating wins, and they put themselves in a position not only to make the playoffs but also potentially win the AFC East. That had to, all that thinking had to go out the window. This idea that this is, we're a year ahead. We're not a year ahead. We're this year. We had an opportunity this year to make the playoffs. If we squander that, and it's likely that we're going to, because the Jets are going to have to win at least 3 games, possibly 4, to make the playoffs. I don't see, based on the play of the Jets the last 3 weeks, including the Bears game, where this team is capable of that with this offensive coordinator. Now, the fact that they didn't start Mike White from the beginning of the year, that was a huge mistake. The fact that Bam Knight was not on the roster until a couple of weeks ago, that was a huge mistake. Now, obviously, the fact that Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker got hurt, those are probably, and to me, they are the most significant injuries on the Jets this season. And if they can't come back at high levels next year, then the Jets team is going to have a real problem next year and moving forward. But bringing it back to this year, both Patriots games were there for the Jets to win. And if you're going to say that Robert Saleh's hands were tied in the sense that he had to start Zach Wilson, he was not allowed to bench Zach Wilson, period, at that point, and put in Mike White as a starter. As those games evolve, certainly in the fourth quarters of those games, as the head coach, he has the unilateral authority as the head coach of the New York Jets to sit down his starting quarterback who's not getting the job done and put in Mike White. The fact that he didn't in both of those games, the fact that Mike White wasn't even available to be the quarterback, I'm sorry, he was. The fact that he didn't put him in is why the Jets are not going to beat the Patriots head-to-head. That's why they've lost 2 games in the conference record, why they're not going to beat the Chargers head-to-head. In fact, it seems at this point that the team that the Jets have the most opportunity to defeat in terms of a wild card is the Miami Dolphins. If the Dolphins win out before Week 18 and the Jets win out before Week 18, then the Dolphins will be 1 game ahead of the Jets. And if the Jets beat them, then they'll be tied. The Jets will sweep the series and the Jets will make the playoffs. That will require the Jets to win all 4 of their games, which is incredibly doubtful. This team is probably not going to make the playoffs. They had every opportunity to make the playoffs. The number one reason why they didn't make the playoffs is that they did not make the switch to Mike White quick enough. And the number 2 reason that they didn't make it is because Michael Ford is the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets.
No, and listen, and I hear that. But again, when you look at the drastic improvements that we've seen, even the injuries that we've sustained, look at our tackle position. We lost Mekhi Becton early. Then Dwayne Brown went down. Then George Fant went down as well. We had guys shuffling in and out. You had Max Mitchell coming in playing amazing at right tackle. You had Vera Tucker there at guard. Then he went from guard to left tackle. Then he went from left tackle to, I think he played right tackle this year as well. He was all over the place. So when you look at these drastic improvements and these answers that you have now, you have significant answers to a lot of the questions that you had coming into the season. How can you call the season a failure? You can't. You can't call the season a failure when you're seeing guys, yes, we've lost close games. Yes, those Patriots games were there for the taking. Yes, there's other games as well that we've lost this season. That Vikings game, we lose, due to the play calling in the red zone where we were on the 1. We lost this Bills game. There's questionable things here. But there's so many improvements that we've been able to make in steps. And I'm sorry, and I tell Jets fans this all the time, we're still in a rebuild. We're still trying to find our way. And a lot of Jets fans have lost sight of that. I have not. We're still trying to find our way in this league. We still, again, young players. Who would have thought that Sauce, we would draft him and he would come in and be the best corner in the league? Nobody thought that. That is Crew Chief raises his hand. Come on. Okay, look, everybody except for Crew Chief, okay? Nobody really would think that because that's not normally what happens. Generally, rookie corners come in, they struggle a bit, they try to find their way. Sauce came into this league like he had been here for 10 years and has been very, very good at what he does, right? So, again, Garrett Wilson breaking the Jets rookie receiving record this year. Who would have really come in and thought that? Not really. He already has, 868 yards? He could end up with a 1,000-yard season. When is the last time a Jets rookie? It's never happened, as a matter of fact. It never happened. So all of these things that I'm talking about is like, these are young guys that we're going to have for years to come. Nobody would think they would come in and produce like that. How can you call the season a failure when you have so many young guys stepping up? And you talked about Elijah Vera Tucker. I want to be clear. I'm a USC guy. Fight on. I want to say that really quickly. He's going to be dominant when he comes back next year because that's what USC does, right? You get our players, we handle business in this league. But again, he's a cog to the piece. He's a cog in the wheel. So we're seeing all of these guys step up. Yes, there's been coaching issues. Mike LaFleur getting too cute. But again, all these things can be improved on. We finally have an identity. We finally have a cohesiveness about our football team. And I know you talk about Saleh. He's made some questionable calls. But again, when you look at how the guys rally around him, when you look at how they look at him and they call to him, how much they respect him, that alone, how long have we been missing that? We're coming from Adam Gase stepping into this.
Yeah.
This season cannot be called a failure with the way that we're looking. We're at the door. We're right at the door. And again, we're still building. We're right at that door. Even if we missed the playoffs this year, we were right there. So next year, boom, that's another building block. Now we're ready to go. We're out the gate. But you can't look at this year and look at these Jets and the way that they've played and the games that they've been in and say that it's a failure if they don't make the playoffs with so many young players thriving and the coaching stepping forward.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a failure. I would call it a colossal failure. As a long-suffering Jets fans, and I realize that there are two camps. There's the rose-colored lens Jets fans, and then there's the long-suffering Jets fans. And I respect the other side. I acknowledge that there are two sides. But last episode, we talked about the 1997 final game of the year against Detroit. The Jets win that game. They make the playoffs. They lose the game. They don't make the playoffs. They go down in defeat. Bill Parcells did not want to win the game on the arm of Neil O'Donnell. He put in the Ray Lucas package at the end. He put in the Leon Johnson halfback option. The Jets lost 13-10. Everybody said we were so close. We were so close. We went from 1-15 to 9-7. Next year we're going to do it. We're going to win the Super Bowl. Well, what happens? The Jets go 12-4. They make it all the way to the AFC Championship game. They're up 10-0 at halftime. Then all of a sudden there's all these interceptions, all these fumbles, all of these, and the Jets lose to the Broncos. And then everyone says, oh, and it was a failure too. Right. And then next year you say, okay, well, this is the year we're going to win the Super Bowl because we were 9-7, then we're 12-4, and we got all these players, blah, blah, blah. What happens against the Patriots week 1 at Giant Stadium? Vinny blows out his knee, and then Parcells waits until week 10 to go to Rick Lucas instead of Rick Meyer. Okay, I've been through this movie before. It's not about talent. It's not about improvement. It's about the fact that the New York Jets are hands down the worst organization in the history of organized sports, and it never ends. Okay, you've got to have greatness at all times, every time. If Robert Saleh is a well-liked coach, well, God bless him. You don't have to be liked by your team to be a great coach. You can be liked by your team and be a terrible coach. You can be hated by your team and be a Hall of Fame coach. Just ask Bill Tuna Parcells. Okay, they've all got to be on the ball. They've all got to win. They've all got to be champions, and we've not seen it from this team. Now, I'm not ready to rule out to fire Robert Saleh. I think Robert Saleh has demonstrated enough this year that he should come back in 2023. But his job is to get rid of his best friend as offensive coordinator. And if he doesn't do that, if Mike LaFleur is the offensive coordinator in 2023, then Robert Saleh is on the hot seat, and I do not forgive next year.
All right, let's wrap this up with a couple of things here. Number one, Robert Saleh has done a phenomenal job. And I want to push back a little bit on the notion of some of his questionable play calling, because I think he's done an incredible job with his play calling and his situational play calling more than anything else. And we've talked about this as well. And that's something that was absolutely missing with Gase, specifically with Bowles, who I think was one of the worst at it, and Rex those last 3 or 4 years. And you could see what's going on with Bowles down in Tampa. I mean, that's a whole different thing. So Rex Saleh has done a great job, and he's the right guy for it. And I want to circle back on one last thing, and we're going to put a bow on this. And Long Beach, you touched on this, and this is what's so good about it. We are there, and we have the pieces. That is actually why you can move off of Zach, and you don't have to worry about a second or third coming back, whether you dress him or whether you don't. It doesn't matter. The general manager, Joe Douglas has done that good of a job and put us in that type of position where we can move off from no matter what you get back from, because the pieces are already there, and that's huge. And there's one last part of this. Don't worry about the money. Joe Douglas did such a good job of getting us to be one of the worst teams in dead cap money. And the Trumaine Johnson, as we know, was one of the worst contracts there was. And once we got off of that, I think we're, if not the best, the top 2 teams in the NFL in dead cap money right now, in less than $3 million or whatever it is. That is huge. So if you got to pay Zach next year or eat half of his salary, whatever Cleveland had to do with Baker, you're going to be just fine and still pay Quinnen and still have the pieces in place. That's what good organizations do. The team is on the up. And Johnny, I want to say this. Yeah, we've all seen this movie before, but we've all seen the ebb and flow of the NFL. And at the moment, and especially with our schedule, the Jets are still lined up in a very good position, and especially to your point about Miami, to make the playoffs. Let's see what happens. Obviously, they got to take care of business against Detroit. They got to take care of business against Jacksonville. 2 very winnable games, and then they've got Seattle, who is absolutely on the decline. And unfortunately, Geno is kind of showing the true colors the last 2 games, and Kenneth Walker is not as healthy as he once was. So we'll see what ultimately happens. But we're going to end on a high note here because I've got a lot of questions here, and most of them we've already touched on, but there's one that I kind of like. And Johnny, it's actually directed to you. I mean, let's bring this back and have a little bit of fun. Paolo DeRigo wants to know, Johnny, when was our special teams ever this good in Jets history? You're our historian. Bring us to it, man, because really they have been good and punctuated by the fact, and you want to talk about what Saleh's done and some really good play calls. He's had 2 incredible fake punts at the right time and some block punts, including this particular block punt for the safety. Your man, Jermaine Johnson, who came through and did it. Johnny, when was our special teams ever this good in Jets history?
Well, the Jets special teams has been this good at times. If you want to go back to the Rex Ryan era, when you had Brad Smith, number 16, I would put him at backup against the Lions this year over Zach Wilson this week, I should say. But yeah, they had a really strong the whole like Mike Westhoff era that you had with the Jets. There was one of the hallmarks of the Jets teams were their special teams. But the special teams unit, Greg Zuerlein, we finally have a kicker. Jermaine Johnson's play against the Bills this Sunday for the safety, that was outstanding. To your point, that was an excellent pick by Joe Douglas in the first round, along with the other 2.
And even Braden Mann is having a nice comeback season. For the most part, he's done pretty well. Hennessy's been great. Greg the Leg, unbelievable. Michael Clemens, putting him and using him on special teams, no doubt about it. All right, Long Beach Joe.
Yes.
Out. Give us your parting thoughts before we end this show. You've said a lot today, but what do we really think? I mean, are we making the playoffs? And we know how you feel. It's a successful season with or without it, and it doesn't. We're not holding you to a prediction. What do you think? Are we making these playoffs?
I'm more of a week-to-week guy, but as of right now in my mind, again, there's quite a bit of football left. I think we have a chance, and I think that we could end up sliding in. I think that we could. So I'm going to say yes. That's what I'm going to say. Again, people, I'm not trying to be like the eternal optimist, but I think that we have quite a bit of a chance. And I will say, yes, I believe that we make the playoffs and slide in the last season.
Appreciate the last words. Gentlemen, this has been over an hour. On a show that usually lasts 35 to 45. You know what? We had the time. We had the excitement rolling. We appreciate everything. Long Beach Joe of the Long Beach Joe Show. You were amazing, man. Thank you for coming on. As always, I am A.M. Pfeffer, Johnny Jets, of course. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everybody for joining us today. Tarmac Tuesday. We will see you this coming Friday, Flight Plan Friday. We are going to talk preview on the Detroit Lions game. We appreciate it. Thanks again. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. This is amazing.